Have you ever seen a 3D printed zipper snake? This thing haunts my dreams. Even though I see it right before my eyes, I still can't quite understand how does that thing even work. I woke up thinking about this mysterious zipper snake. It would be cool to make something similar like that. This is how most of my projects start. I see something cool and I want to try making something using similar mechanics. While brewing my morning coffee, I already have some ideas on what I could make. Zippers are used in so many different things like clothing, backpacks, and so on. And I'm hoping that my 3D printed zippers will be as useful. So I have been watching this video for a while now. I still have no idea how this zipper mechanism even works. It seems borderline magic to me, but I still want to create something using this mechanism. The zippers are like the most common thing there is, but even inspecting my hoodies, I still have no idea how this thing actually even works and how to turn this into a 3D printed product. This just doesn't make sense to me. Luckily, most common things have plenty of information on the internet, and the Wikipedia page for the zippers is quite plentiful. This wiki page on zippers has plenty of information. It even has an animation showing how the early zipper mechanism worked. Apparently there was even a patent on 1917 for the zipper mechanism. It just boggles my mind how did people come up with this shit without the internet. Lucky for me, I can use this knowledge for my advantage. But what should I do with this information? Well, at this point I'm practically a professional animator, so I can just show you what I have in mind. First off, I have to figure out how do zippers even work, and can I turn it into a 3D printed product. I first plan on making a paper holder for my notes, and some custom magnets. I design most of my stuff on paper, so this seems like a good starting point. I also need to design a locking mechanism to keep the zippers in place. I promise this will make sense later, maybe, hopefully. Before getting ahead of myself, I started my design from testing out different joint designs. The zippers will have to bend and move smoothly, so I think the joint design is one of the key elements for success. These are the first zipper prototypes that I made. The first three were kind of bad. I can't really vision on how 3D printed zippers would work, so I made several test pieces. And you can even link these zipper parts manually to make some sort of bond between the pieces. After that I made some improvements and the design started to feel quite right. This first version was obviously quite bad. It does sort of work out like a zipper, but returning the piece does not quite work out. So after this failure I added these small knobs on these pieces, hoping it would help quiet the zippers properly. Yeah, obviously this version did not quite work out as well. Even this version almost works. Oh boy, how many times have I thought it almost works, and that turns into many weeks of struggle. And it seems the mechanism is surprisingly simple. But I still have a long way to go before I can actually make something useful out of this. Everything was going pretty smoothly at this point. I still wanted to improve the movement of the zippers, so I designed a new joint to see if I could do that. The joints have around 180 degrees of rotation. So this is the new and improved joint, and this is the old joint. The movement with the new joint seemed to be a little bit smoother. And I also want the zippers to be quite rigid, since they have to be able to stand straight and still be able to hold some weight on top of them. These zippers are actually quite fun to play with, but I'm not sure if I can actually turn this into something useful. I probably should have not said that, since this was when the struggles really started. Next up was designing on how the zippers would move in and out of the box. When I was designing this didn't even occur to me that this could be a problem. Yeah, I don't think this design is going to work out either. It turns out you need some kind of guide for these 3D printed zippers so you can unzip them. I spent so many hours trying to figure this out and even changed some colors to get some variations. I kept printing and it still wouldn't work. This is like the 20th chipper design that I have made, and I still somehow cannot make it work properly. This is so frustrating since someone has already done this and I cannot make it properly. The design itself somehow seems to work, but sometimes it gets stuck and the movement should be really smooth, so this is not good enough. If your design looks more like a rail track than guiding rail, maybe you have done something wrong. This is not working out, so I think I need a break. Usually if you cannot solve a complex problem, it's just better to take your time and go to sleep. With fresh mind you usually have fresh ideas. And once again I did come up with new ideas. This is the new idea that I came up with. The movement seems to be much better and smoother than before. It's still not perfect, but probably good enough to move on. I think it's time to start designing the locking mechanism. It was finally time to move on to the stage 2 of my plan, designing the locking mechanism. My first idea was to use some kind of compliant mechanism to hold the chipper in place. After watching some videos, it seemed like a reasonable solution. Compliant mechanisms are supposed to be flexible and reliable, so that sounds like a great deal to me. I quickly found out that deal was a total scam. My designs were not looking at all like in the video. Yeah, I don't think this idea is going to work out. I'll have to try something new. Have you ever heard of the two-state button? Cause that was my next idea. I found a couple of these cool videos demonstrating the two-state button. The working principle seems relatively simple, so I just went ahead and designed some of my own buttons. I made 10 or so buttons with slightly different shapes. I'm sure there is some science on what the optimal shape should be, but I leave the science for others. This is an experimental channel. I will do and think later. Making this button is actually quite simple. You just need to add one spring on the bottom and it sort of works. And I'm not gonna lie, my buttons still have some issues. It's far from perfect. I copied the shape just looking from the video and it seems to be working quite well. It certainly is not perfect. My designs doesn't really work if you tilt the button. I think this could be fixed if you had constant tension on the mechanism. If you hold it normally, it works quite well. But since my design is practically always in the same orientation, it's probably fine to use this even if it's not perfect. And if you are wondering why some of these buttons look like an alien, these handles are supposed to lock the chippers in their place, which I will show you next. The locking mechanism is attached at the back. At this point you probably can tell how well this locking mechanism is going to work just by looking at the design. Yeah, it's not working out that great. But I told you this is an experimental channel. You cannot expect professional design here. Okay, it doesn't really work. The handles are supposed to keep this in place, but they are not strong enough to actually do that. But hey, at least it almost works. That's probably worth something. This is a bit of classical case where I have already committed so much time that I just cannot let go of my idea. This almost works, but it really doesn't. At this point, it's pretty important to think about how do you deal with failure. This project certainly is not going the way that I wanted. Every new model that I print seems to have some slight issues. Failing so many times certainly doesn't feel great. But at the same time, I feel like failing means that I'm pushing my skills and still trying to learn new things. So am I actually failing or just learning new things? I think probably both. I still printed out a couple of new models with some slight changes. Since it almost works, I must be getting pretty close on fixing this thing. I'm not even sure if I actually believe that. But I still believe it's better to have a positive attitude. If you only think about failure from the start, would you even start doing new things? Failing is just part of the process. And with positive attitude, I can at least say I really like these color choices. And the other model is also pretty cool. I played around with the idea that you could see the mechanism, and I kind of like the idea. The mechanism is now working quite smoothly, and the biggest problem is still the locking mechanism. And at this point, I'm not sure if I want to even fix that. So this is what after all this work, this is what I ended up with. Like, it almost works, but it really doesn't. I think I have to abandon this idea for now, but I have spent so much time on this. I want to make something useful, so this is not the end yet. I will have to figure out something else. At the start of the video, I did promise to do some custom magnets. I think it's time to do that, but let me warn you, I might have gone a bit too far this time. I wonder if this is a bit too much. No, this should be just the right amount. Yep, there is quite many monkeys. Maybe I should show you next how this monkey farm started. Multicolor printing is like an addiction, I tell you. First you might print out a colorful box, and next thing you know you have an army of colorful monkeys. I did use AI to generate some images for myself and modified the images with GIMP and Inkscape. Then you just need some super glue and 8mm magnets. I don't think emoji magnets are really a unique idea, but these turned out really cool. You should also be extra careful when handling this super glue. You don't want them to get stuck on your finger like I did. I'm slowly getting more experienced with the multicolor printing. I did have to do like 20 different versions of these magnets to have decent results. My last 3 projects have all used multicolor printing. It's one of those things that you first think you don't need it, but who doesn't want a little bit of 3D printing luxury? The idea behind these magnets was actually quite simple. I wanted these to symbolize on how I'm feeling and how the project is going. So these are quite fitting for this project. You don't hear about this project, you don't see this project, and you don't talk about this project. But you can still leave a comment below. But if you think that was all, I did say I was going to go a bit overboard. These monkey magnets cannot describe every feeling that I have for a project, so I had to make a couple of new magnets. And couple of magnets in this case means couple boxes of magnets. I probably don't need this many magnets myself, so maybe they will make for a great gift. Now there should be enough magnets to describe my every project, whether it's 1-star or 5-star project, whether I love this project, or maybe I'm absolutely horrified or even borderline crying. So if I had to choose magnets for this project, it would probably like quite shocking, borderline crying, 1-star project. I think that sums it up. In total I printed out 12 different magnets, and they turned out pretty nice. I will also put these STL files for sale. Links are in description, and if you don't want to buy the models, you can just leave a like to show support for this channel. Now back to the video. Then it was time to finish up the paper stands by installing some magnets. I tried my best to make the spacing wide enough so I could display many magnets on the paper stands. And of course, if you have many magnets, you can display many small notes if you want. At this point, I'm also quite happy that the project is finally starting to see its end. I feel like this project was a real struggle, but if I think about my earlier projects, they are usually a bit of a struggle as well. Almost done here. All that is left is to show you my final design and put all of this together. This was the final idea that I came up with. Can you guess what it is? I think I still made something useful. Well, you can see it soon. At this point, I think abandoning my original idea was the right choice. I really do love the chipper mechanism, but let's face it, my original idea should have been planned better. I'm not saying it was a totally bad idea, I just think my design was not good enough. This feels so good. The project is finally done. Can you guess what this is? It's an over-engineered pencil case. So it's time for the grand reveal. So this stupid project actually kind of works, but I still have to find the right emojis for this one. This project was really shocking, made me cry, and I still say it's a 1-star project. After all this, I still love it.